Hi, I'm Matt Andrzejewski, and I'll be your instructor for Learning and Conditioning this semester, Psychology 303. I wanted to talk a little bit about the course and give you a little introduction to the course. So here we go. The content of this course is a little strange, or maybe you may be wondering about it. This course is called Learning and Conditioning, and that's vaguely what it's about, but I find I would hold that conditioning is really a synonym for learning, but I'd like to call this course Learning and Behavior, and that's what I think better describes the content of the course that we're going to do this semester. It's about what humans and animals do, and maybe even more than animals. Maybe we could talk about what even insects do, or even lower organisms than that, or simpler organisms than that. And it's about how they come to do what they do. Because there are some things that we learn to do, some things that we didn't do before, and then we can do them because of some reasons. But then there are other things that we do that we didn't learn how to do. And we're going to talk about those examples, some of those examples as well. And this has nothing to do with the complexity of what we do, because it turns out that there are some instinctual behavior patterns that are very complex that we didn't learn to do. And then there are other very, very complex things that we did learn to do. So one of the goals of this class, one of the objectives of this class, is to classify things. Well, I want you to be able to identify and describe some basic facts, some basic observations. I want you to be able to name certain things that humans and animals do. When you see something, I want you to be able to categorize or classify or name that as an instance of a more general phenomena or a more general thing. For example, one thing that we need to be able to identify or classify is non-learned behavior from learned behavior. A second objective of this class is going to be to identify relationships between behavior and other events in our environment. So what we might call, or what we're going to call to a certain extent, stimuli or context or a stimulus versus eating or drinking or running, things that we do, behavior, and other events like sights and smells and sounds. And when I say relationship, what I mean is largely the temporal relationship, we would call it, or the relationship in time between two things. So did the sight come first? Did the sound come first? Did the taste come first? Did the smell come first? Or second in the chain of behavior or the chain of events that we're looking for. Did the behavior come first, or did the event come first? Which came second? What produced what? What is the relationship in space and time to these two things that we're going to be looking at? And then based on the order of events, we're going to be classifying one as one sort of thing and one as something else. The third objective of the class is to apply this classification system of events and relationships to the real world. Now, the real world is kind of a funny thing because people have criticized scientists for doing studies in the laboratory that are not applicable to the real world. They sometimes say that, sometimes and often a criticism of the real world. Influence of extraneous variables and other things. So it's not different than the real world. It's just it's part of a one. He called it the one world. We tend to think of the laboratory and not the laboratory as being two different spaces, but they're really all governed by the same principles and laws. It's not like we go into a laboratory and the laws of gravity are suspended. We don't go into a laboratory and the principles of behavior are suspended. It's just that we can isolate certain components, certain situations, certain features. We can eliminate the influence of a lot of different things in a laboratory, and then test the influence of more pronounced events and circumstances. The application issue, though, is really interesting because that what I'm going to be teaching you about, we can apply also to to science, the behavior of scientists. And we can even apply the principles in the classification system and the relationships to our own behavior. What one person has called the self-interpretive behavior analysis. The principles that we're going to learn are applicable to every and all situation, including our own behavior. And I think that's really neat. Behavior, though, what we do is funny as a subject matter of study, because sometimes it leaves a mark. Sometimes we see the consequences of our behavior. We see what happens when we do something. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just comes and goes. It's here and there. It's actions, it's activity, and it's here one minute and gone the next. So we sometimes refer to this as the behavioral stream. We see behavior and then it's gone. And even though we saw it, it's not anywhere in the present anymore. But sometimes it is. Sometimes when we dig a hole, we see that there's an opening in the earth. There's a pile of dirt next to it. But at other times, if I wave to you and stop, the wave is gone. It doesn't mean it didn't have an effect on you. So learning is a long-term change in behavior as a result of experience. So behavior is embedded in the definition of learning. It's not what you know. It's not knowledge. It's not the acquisition of information. It's a change in behavior. It's not the result of development, because we know that some behavioral changes are a result of just sort of growing up. So we're going to classify learning as involving behavior change vis-a-vis experience, not just of development. Now, not all complex behavior is a result of learning. We're going to learn that there are some instinctual behavior patterns that are very complex that are not the result of learning. I'm going to be teaching this course from a radical behaviorist perspective, or what we call the application of that science or that philosophy, behavior analysis. Radical behaviorism is the philosophy. Behavior is treated as a subject matter. That means that the mind is not the subject matter. We're not studying the mind. We're not studying the soul. We're studying what organisms do. Okay, the subject matter of behavior analysis is behavior, not the mind, the soul, memory, or any of those things. It's what people and organisms do. Now, we're going to expand the definition of behavior, not just to what we see, but to events that might take place that we can't see. What we might say is within the skin. Okay, so if you experience events that you might call fear, we can still study that as physiological changes in heart rate and blood pressure and etc. So the radical notion of radical behaviorism is that behavior includes events that are going on outside that we can see, but maybe even events that go on inside. I am going to be teaching this course also, and I have to acknowledge some assumptions. I am an empiricist. We're going to be talking about empirical relations, scientific relations. We're not going to be talking about opinion or authority. We're going to be using the principles of science. I'm a pragmatist scientist, and that means that the material world is at issue here. I believe in the principle of falsifiability. That means, in principle, a scientific hypothesis has to be able to be proven false. If it can't be proven false, then it's not a scientific hypothesis. I hold a loose observability criteria, and that is that what we see is going to be of primary concern. That doesn't mean that there aren't events that we can't see. It's just that we're not going to give them, especially, a principled status. In fact, I'm going to do the opposite. I am a determinist in the sense that I believe that behavior is caused, but there are some random events or stochasticity in our world. So I just want to acknowledge these assumptions as I'm teaching. The last assumption, the last sort of requirement for me in a science is that there is some heavy quantitative analyses and or use of statistics. Okay, So thanks for listening to this intro video. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of a sense of what this course is about, and we will talk to you soon.